Hello, fellow pilgrims. Today, I'm here with a young lady for me, young, I'm an old man, and a young lady from America. And her name is Yasmeen Youngblood. I hope I pronounced it correctly with my Dutch, how you say it, dialect. And Yasmeen, I'm very happy. We already talked before to get acquainted with each other. So I know a little bit about your story, but could you please introduce yourself, who you are, where you live, and that kind of stuff so the people know who I'm talking with?
Yes, and you did great pronouncing my name. My name is Yasmeen Youngblood, and I am in Dallas, Texas. I am actually an educator in Dallas. I was in the classroom for 17 years as a third, fourth, and fifth grade teacher. And then recently, in the last couple of years, I transitioned to a position as a librarian. I'm an avid climber, and I actually have climbed on several continents, Europe being one of them, but also Africa and South America. I climbed in Iceland and also uh, I can't remember everywhere I've climbed, but I have a platform called the Trekking Teacher where
Yeah.
people in my community follow along with my treks. So I do some videography work there and some storytelling, and it's just a way to inspire people, especially people that are my age and may not think that they can do these things, which I'm 45, to inspire them to get out there and try things that maybe they never would have tried before. So I'm very proud of the community that I've kind of created around this. And I'm also very happy to be able to tell my Camino story today. So thank you so much for having me on.
Yeah, I'm so happy, and also the talk we had before. And I'm happy like a small child with every new story, because it is like unwrapping the package which lays below the Christmas tree. Because the stories are many times mind blowing, and many pilgrims in the podcast kept me silent, which is quite a job to do,
Mhm.
and even crying. So I hope today I keep it dry. So, and also you say to do new things, and this is for you also something new to do, to be participating in a podcast.
Yeah,
Yeah.
this is my very first one.
Yeah, and actually, this is my first podcast in my life as well. So, anyway, and by the way, you climbed so much in so much areas. Did you also climb a mountain in the Pyrenees?
So I've climbed Kilimanjaro and the Alps, and then I did the Lodviger, I think I pronounced it right, in Iceland, the Camino, and I feel like I'm forgetting one somewhere in there. I feel like I'm forgetting one right now, but
Yeah, you're getting
um,
old.
I'm getting old. Yes, I'm 45. But I try to climb every summer. So this started in 2018. I actually climbed Kilimanjaro with the Leukemia and Lymphoma Society after my husband was diagnosed with leukemia in 2013. I had done some work with that society, and they had been really supportive of us as we went through that cancer journey. And so when I saw that there was a big fundraising opportunity, it looked very daunting and I knew I wasn't ready for it, but I did it anyway. And I ended up raising the money that I needed to and making it to the top of that mountain. And I think that once that happened, I knew that I could take on other treks and also be successful.
Yeah,
So
great. Yeah,
it's been a really good journey from there, just based
yeah,
on the confidence that I gained. So
yeah. Okay, so the Inner Camino podcast is a self-reflection podcast for
yes.
pilgrims and by pilgrims, and I'm also a pilgrim, walked 4 times. So how many times did you walk the Camino?
So I've only walked the Camino twice. My first one was in 2025, and my second one was this past year in 2026 in June. And actually, the Camino is the first one that I've ever done twice. So my goal was just to hop doing these different treks or these different mountain climbs, but there was something about the Camino that called me right back the very next year when I never thought that I would repeat one. I only have my summers to do one trek, so I tried to be very intentional about creating new experiences, but I knew after I did the Camino once that I definitely had to come back. So I think I'm going to be coming back every year, and then every other one that I might be able to fit in. Yes, but I think that the Camino.
And perhaps you can, we hope that we can receive next year hospitaleros. So perhaps you can help out for a week or two, receiving the pilgrims here. We don't know yet. It depends if we can find a place also where we can live in the village. But if we are successful, then that would be nice. So, the podcast is about self-reflection, and that happens quite a lot. And especially in the part in the Camino Frances, which is known as the Meseta. And I don't want to maneuver what you want to talk to in a certain area, but that's where people are afraid for and having revelations and all that kind of stuff. So I'm not after stories about your blisters and your backpack packing and that kind of stuff.
Right.
But I'm really interested in things like Camino provide moments. I call it now Camino provides what you need and not per se what you want.
Right.
Magical moments. Revelations, insights, things you left behind, things you wanted to leave behind, but you didn't leave behind. It was sticky. It stays still there. Meetings you had with people where you still think about that kind of stories. These, what I call inner Camino stories. So do you have one or a couple to share, which you really want to share?
I do. And I'm so appreciative because I feel like this is such a powerful story, and I didn't necessarily know what platform I was going to be able to share it on. And I've actually have not shared this story yet. And so I'm really excited to show, or for the audience to hear this, because it illustrates exactly what the Camino is all about and what it can do for you and what it can do for the other people who witness it. So my first Camino was in 2025, and that one was just kind of me trying it because I'd heard the name Camino and I really didn't know what I was getting into. And so I had planned this trip, and there was another teacher friend that I have that had been following me on my platform, and she said, wherever you're going next, I want to go with you. So I said, okay, I'm doing the Camino this summer. And she was like, I'm going. So when we started the Camino, it was immediately, we loved it. We loved being able to go from hostel to hostel. We loved stopping at cafes. We loved being able to just have that freedom each day and each night to travel at our own pace. It was wonderful. And then at one point we started thinking, like, wouldn't it be great for other teachers to experience this? Because a lot of times we limit ourselves to our role of pouring into the lives of our students. And this is an experience that actually pours into us as individuals. So we talked about it and we just kind of moved on to the next thing, and we didn't give it a whole lot of thought. But on the day before actually reaching Santiago, I put out a video and I said, tomorrow I will get to Santiago, and I would like for anyone who wants me to bring their prayers with them to let me know, and I'm going to write it in my little prayer journal, and I will bring your prayers to Santiago. And one of my coworkers that was watching and following along said, Yasmeen, can you please pray for my aunt Irene? Because very recently she had lost her son in a horrible motorcycle accident. And the family was grieving a lot. And so I said, absolutely, I'll pray for your aunt. And so I just wrote in my journal, Erica's aunt Irene. And so when I got to Santiago, we were trying to make it there by the noon mass, because the noon mass was the one where they were going to swing the big incense.
Oh, yeah.
And so we really sped up that morning. I mean, we left super early. We were racing there. We were sore. We were just, doing everything we could to make it there by noon. And we made it by noon, but the line to get into that mass was really long. And so they stopped us, like 5 people before we were able to get in. And
Blimey.
So disappointed. I mean, I was so disappointed. And so we said, okay, we can't do anything about it. We'll just come back the next morning. So we came back the next morning, and the place that I stood in that church, or the place that we sat in that church, there was this window at the very top, and that window was like there was a stream of light coming down through that window. And when I looked up, I could tell that that light was on me, because it's kind of like when you're on a stage and you look into a spotlight and you can just kind of tell that the light is on you. And I wasn't completely sure, but I looked to my left and I saw that my friend was taking pictures because she also saw that the light was directly on me in that moment and just thought it would be a great picture moment. And in the moment that that light was on me, I heard God so clearly, like more clearly than I had ever heard him in my life. And I had no idea what the preacher was saying because I don't speak Spanish, but the feeling that I got in that moment, the message that I got was God telling me, this is going to be part of your mission. Somehow I knew the Camino was going to be part of my greater mission. And he was telling me that somehow I was going to bring other people to him through the Camino. And I didn't quite know what it meant, but I knew that that was a message. So that day, we went back to our hotel. Actually, we took a train back to Lugo the next day, and I made a video updating it, and I told all about that moment. And I said, something happened in that moment, and I know things are about to happen in my life. I don't know what it is, but I know things are about to happen in my life because I was told very clearly in that moment. So when I got back to my regular school schedule, I began planning a trip for several teachers to come with me on the Camino, and it felt like the right thing to do. However, I had no experience guiding a group. I am not a guide. I'm not, I don't set up trips and things like that for people. So I knew that I wasn't ready to do this. And taking all these people to another country where I don't speak the language was a huge undertaking. But I felt that this was what I was supposed to do. And when you feel like something is ordained by God and all you have to do is be obedient, I knew that he would put things into place to make it a successful trip. And so when I put the invitation out, immediately 10 spots filled up. And 10 was the number that I had in my mind because I felt like that would be a manageable number. And one of the people that decided she was going to go was that coworker that asked me to pray for her aunt. And so I said, that would be wonderful. You can definitely come. And she said, well, can I bring my aunt? And so many things had happened between the church and that time that I didn't make the connection that this might be the same aunt that I had prayed for.
Oh, yeah.
So we all met up in Lugo, and that's where we started. And this whole time, and I met her aunt. Her name was Irene. She was just the most lovely person, the most positive person. And so in my mind, I didn't make the connection that this was the same person that had been grieving her son, because that kind of strength, I don't know where that kind of strength comes from. So I didn't make the connection. On night 2, we did a shell ceremony. And our shell ceremony was that we put everyone's name into a bag and everyone picked out a name. And that was the person that at the end of the Camino, we would give our shell to that person. So our job was to just kind of keep an eye on that person and see how, what we admired about them and what we liked about the way that they, were handling the Camino, because we wanted to have something to say to them at the end. Well, the name that I picked was Irene's.
Okay. Well,
Mind, I was like, oh, I'm so familiar with most of these other people because I worked with them. I knew them prior to that, but I didn't really know Irene. So I was like, oh, okay, I got to really pay attention because I really want to have some good things to say. And so as we went through, I saw her being so positive, being so peaceful, taking in the entire experience, laughing, encouraging me as the group leader, even when things didn't go perfectly. And I was just so appreciative to her for that. So at the end, that's what I said to her when I gave her my shell. And I was the first person to go around the circle and say, my person was Irene, and this is what I appreciated about you. And then when it got to her, this is the part that gets me because this is when I realized how everything had come together. Um, she talked about the fact that this trip was so hard for her because a year earlier she had lost her 32-year-old son. And immediately I realized who she was. And I was just completely overwhelmed. She told me that for the first time since
Mm.
this had happened, that she danced and that she felt all of these positive and joyful emotions that she hadn't been able to feel during the time that or since she had been grieving her son. And so I knew in that moment that this was ordained by God. I knew that when I brought that little journal into the church and I prayed for Erica's aunt, that the answer to that prayer was to bring her there. And so I had walked the Camino right next to the person that I had prayed for in that church a year before. And the experience that I had created had given her space and room to feel those positive emotions and that joy again. And I don't necessarily feel like you can just say that that's just happenstance. That is something that is ordained by God. And in that moment, I knew how present God is on the Camino because there's no way that I could have written that, that I could have planned that. And God knew that what she needed was something that would come out of an experience that I had created for that group. And I was like, it was true. He told me that my mission was going to be to bring people to him. And he just confirmed it in that moment when I realized that this had happened for Irene. So that was definitely my big
No,
moment.
that's okay. You managed it. I'm silent. Oh, wow. So I need to process this. This is, because there's so much synchronicity in your story,
Yeah.
things happening from one point to another. And it was not you.
No, it was not me.
No.
No, there's
And
no other
and wait,
explanation.
yeah, it is not you. And I experience also that something is working through persons.
Yes.
Sometimes it's also through me. And you tell me this beautiful story, and I'm speechless, to be honest. So, when did you walk with her? Was it this year or
It was this
when was
year.
this year?
Yes. Yes.
So
In
I'm
June.
and I'm curious. How how is what I cannot say how is it now with Irene
Yeah.
because that's a silly question actually. But I'm curious what that what did it do for her this whole experience, and also you are intertwined there as well. You're really connected in the whole thing. So did she say something about that?
Well, we talked on the train on the way back to Lugo, and I think I know that it's difficult for her to talk about still. It's still very fresh. It's only been a year, but I made it clear to her that I knew that this Camino was for her.
Yeah,
Um,
and for herself, experience this on the Camino. What were her thoughts and her feelings about the experiences she had on the Camino?
yes, she explained that the best thing that someone could do is say, "Tell me about your son."
Yeah,
And so on that train ride, I said, "Tell me about your son."
yeah,
And he was just an amazing person. He was 32. He owned a barber shop. He was just the most generous person around. He was the one that the whole family just depended on and leaned on. And she was just so proud of, the way that she'd raised him. And, losing him was something that her family continues to deal with. The thing about it is that I wouldn't have known because to me, she was this person that was so full of positivity and joy. And that doesn't make sense. There's certain types of joy that you can only get from God. And I feel like that's what I witnessed happening on the Camino. And I feel like it kind of gave her permission to feel that kind of joy again. And I could be completely wrong, and I don't want to speak for anyone else, especially someone who's gone through something like that. But the person that I saw was so joyous. One of the things that we did each night was we found a gelato shop, and that just kind of became our tradition each night. And that was just kind of like, when we were so tired and just ready to get to the next town, it would be like, oh, I wonder what gelato shop was there. Like, what are we going to eat tonight? And to me, it seemed like that was our only concern. That was the thing that we were walking toward each day. And I had no idea of the emotions that she was processing throughout. But I hope that it gave her room and permission to process these emotions in a place that is so holy and allows that type of reflection. You can't help but to reflect when you're on the Camino because you only have you and your thoughts, the inner Camino, right? And so I think even sometimes when you don't want to confront certain things, you just kind of work through whatever comes to the surface naturally. And it's difficult to repress those things like we do in our daily lives when we're walking this sacred pilgrimage. So the emotions, the processing, the reflection, the joy that comes from being on this path is so real. And there is something that happens at that church at the end. I mean, this isn't a coincidence that all of these people walk the Camino every year. There's got to be something there for it to be something that people fly across the world to do. And I'm definitely a witness to the fact that there is something there. And I feel like there's something there for everyone. It's not going to be, the same thing, but it reveals parts of you that you may not have even known existed.
Yeah. So there are a couple of questions is now floating around in my brain. And before I go there, when I walked my first Camino in 2013 with my son, he was then 13, and I arrived in the church, and we were walking both in the church, and he was a young bloke, so he said, "Oh yeah, Daddy, that's a nice church," and poof, off he was, And I was walking there totally overwhelmed by the grandeur of the cathedral, and there is something there in the air. You feel it. You cannot name it. And I had a blessing there of a German priest. They don't do that anymore, by the way. At that time, they had booths all around the wall, and you could go there and you talk and you get a blessing.
Okay.
And that blessing was insane what happened at that moment. Mm-hmm. So, I totally with you when you say there is something there. And that's also on more places on the Camino. I have discovered while walking 4 times, and 3 times the last 160, 1 time from the monastery Samos, and last year all the way from Saint Jean. So what is all the way? I mean, but anyway, and I noticed that there are what I call magical places or power places, because when you enter there, it is overwhelming.
Yeah.
Really overwhelming. You don't know what it is. You don't know what is going on. It could be emotionally overwhelming, but it is overwhelming.
Yes.
Yeah, and that's not only in a church.
Yeah.
And I noticed, I landed this year in Valoria de Rioja,
Mm.
where the Saint Santo Domingo de la Calzada is being born.
Yes.
And I don't want to make this place special, so don't get me wrong.
Mm-hmm.
But we feel and we start to sense this is also one of these places on the Camino.
Mm.
Because there are things happening here which has really nothing to do with me being a nice bloke or something, or the inner Camino house. Yeah, and we are flabbergasted by things which is happening, and we just cannot express it. And then we realized that how people are reacting was the same thing how we reacted when we entered this house in February. And we thought, but we are changing our opinion about that, but we are not sure because we don't want to make it special. But
Yeah.
we went in and there was a certain thing happening and it got us completely. And we thought it was like, oh, we like the house so much, so that's why we buy it.
Right.
But we see that happens with many pilgrims who go into the door and something happens. And then I think, oh, wow. And it happened for weeks in a row. And then certain time I said to my wife, Carola, I don't believe it is the thing what we do here, give the pilgrims a home for a moment. And I think there is something else.
Yeah.
And then we started to realize that it could be that the village Valoria is also a magical place, a power place. I don't know how I need to call it, but there are many of these places on the Camino. And in that way, I really understand. I also want to walk again next year. So, yeah.
Yeah, definitely. And you have to be able to receive that. You
Yeah.
have to be in a mindset that you can see things that aren't necessarily in the physical realm. And I think that the Camino has a way of opening up our minds and hearts to
Yeah.
that as
Yeah.
well as we reflect.
Yeah.
So,
But I sidetracked a little bit because the question I had in my head was something different. The lady lost her son.
yes.
And we have the saying on the Camino provides. And many people say, me too, because I experienced it, big deal. The Camino provides what you need and not what you want.
Right.
If you have that saying, how can that be that this is something she needed?
Yeah.
Because suddenly she didn't want it.
Right.
And that question is always so difficult because we just had a very brief talk before we started recording. And we talked about non-judgment is experienced as unconditional love. And we perceive God as unconditional love. And how does that fit that you lose your son?
Yeah.
And how could you say then the Camino provides what you need and not what you want? That's a very cruel saying in a context like that.
Right.
And so you were talking that, and then that question I'm now putting in the air was in my brain. I think, okay, because we are so happy to say the Camino provides what you need and not what you want when the ending is good.
Yes.
Because I ended up here in a Camino house in Valoria, and I live a life now you cannot imagine.
Yeah.
And I'm so happy that the albergue didn't went through. But I wanted it so badly. So it is so easy for me to say now, oh, the Camino provides what you need and not what you want. Because end good, all good. But if something like that happens, then a sentence like that is so cruel and so heartless.
Yeah.
But somewhere he is there at play as well.
Yeah. I think it's hard for me to, speak for someone who's in that position to say, the Camino provides everything you need. Or not everything you need, but what you need. But I think that she appreciated the opportunity to first spend time with her niece and to be in a position to encourage other people around her. to be able to have that quiet, reflective time that she may have needed to meet a whole new community of people because she didn't know any of us. She only knew her niece, and she knew that her niece had worked with me, but she didn't really know anybody else. So she was able to, meet a whole community of people that didn't necessarily know her past. So people weren't maybe treating her like the person that has been grieving for this year. We just knew her as a fellow pilgrim, and maybe that was something that she needed while she was on the Camino as well. I, at the end, felt really bad that I didn't know that this was the same person or what she had been through. But then I thought about it and I was like, maybe I wasn't supposed to know, because maybe
Yeah.
I would have interacted with her in a
In a
completely
different way.
way.
Yeah.
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 And maybe that's not what she wanted.
No.
So I I'm not sure, what it was that specifically that she got that she needed, but I know I remember very vividly that she said she had danced for the first time in a year,
Yeah.
and to, be in a place where you're not able to dance when that's something that you love to do, and then all of a sudden, you're that feeling is lifted enough for you to be able to dance. That's a very specific feeling.
Yeah.
And I love that she was able to experience some of that freedom while she was
Yeah.
on the Camino.
Do you know the story? That's a child story, a very thin book. And the title is, the name of the book is The Little Soul and the Sun. Do you know that story?
I don't know that one.
It fits so in this, what you're telling. So I want to tell it shortly as I can.
Yes, please.
So there was a little soul, and it was in heaven. And it was shining bright, and was so happy, and pure love, unconditional love. And it was so happy there. And then one day it was there in that space with many other souls and light. And it said, oh, I really want to know what I am. And God heard that question and came to the little soul and said, do you really want to know what you are? She said, yeah, says the little soul. Yes, I want to know that. Because he said, you're unconditional love. And am I that? Am I that? And the problem is, if you have never been anything else, you don't know what you are.
Okay.
So if you are called into existence and you are unconditional love, you don't know that you are that, because you always have been that. So then the little soul said, yeah, but how do I know then that I'm unconditional love? And God gave her the answer, the little soul the answer, when you have encountered the opposite. Oh, and what's that? What's that? And God said, hate.
Okay.
Oh, I don't know what that is. I don't know what that is. So I like to learn. I like to learn. I like to learn. And God says, you really like to learn? And many souls heard the conversation. I get goosebumps. Many souls heard the conversations and flocked around the little soul and God. And then God said, I can send you to earth where you can experience what you are not. Oh, and that is hate? Yes, that's hate. Oh, yeah, I like to experience that. I like to experience that. Because then he said, you know what you really are. And then there was one of the souls who were standing around it and said, oh, I will be with you on earth so you can experience hate. So little soul said to the soul, oh, I'm so grateful that you want to do that for me. And he got the answer. I hope that you will still say that when you experience the hate. So the little soul went to earth and experienced hate and was crying out, oh God, help me, because I don't want that. And he came back, and now he knew what he really was, because you only know when it is hot, when you experience cold, and the other way around.
Right.
And I want to share a short personal thing here. When I grew up, my mother was an alcoholic, and I didn't know. She was a secret alcoholic. And that had a devastating effect on our family, but I didn't know. So many years later, I was studying applied psychology because I wanted to get the answer, why do I do what I do? And how can I change that in a positive way? So I was all the way, in spiritual world and religious and psychology. And I became really clear because of this story that perhaps my mother was the other soul who sacrificed himself to me to experience what I'm not.
Oh, wow.
And so my mother had Korsakoff at the end. So she had alcohol dementia. So she really didn't know. She was talking with my father. He was already deceased 10 years before, and he was living in a television. So she was really far gone. Mm-hmm. So I got really that sense, and I got the pull to write her a letter. To write her a letter and thanking her the sacrifice she had brought for me to be able to understand what I'm not and what I really am, and to become the person who was then at the age of 45. So we didn't have ChatGPT yet. So I was writing the text. It was just one page of text. And I reread it for a couple of weeks in a row because I wanted to detect every hidden judgment. It could be a point in a direct way or whatever. And I really put a lot of effort in it to remove any hidden judgment because I felt so much love and appreciation for the hardship she put me through and the suffering she endured because of that. I really became aware of that. So, and after a while, I printed on a paper with some nice things around it, really as a gift. And when I was there at her home where she was living, I gave it to her, and she was really far away. And the last couple of years of her life, she was carrying that letter on her chest as a treasure.
Oh, wow. She understood it?
Oh, yeah. Oh, yeah. Yeah. Okay. And I was thinking about the little soul and the sun story because we humans can really not comprehend why God, because if God is doing everything, why the hell does he take the sun away? That's so cruel.
Yeah. Yeah.
And so what is there for her? And that's the question we here together, we can't answer that. Right. Because we don't know, and most likely she also doesn't know that, and perhaps she will never know. But that whole thing with the little soul and the sun story, that's, by the way, from Neil Donald Walsh, the author of the book Conversation with God. Oh. And he wrote that little parable, it is called in English. Mm-hmm. And he wrote it, and it really touched my soul in a deep level.
Yes.
And that is what I feel, which is all about when we talk about understanding why people do the things they do. Yeah. So we can move to the space of non-judgment and unconditional love.
Yeah. Yeah. That's very profound. As you were talking, I was reflecting on a lot of things, this the way that you were able to turn the environment that you grew up in into that type of a lesson is something that I'm sure took a whole lot of reflection.
Oh, yes.
Inner work, because so many things seem unfair.
Yeah.
And I think that it's very difficult for us to process those things because we don't like to think about them. We are
just too damn stupid for it.
Yeah.
Our human brain is not capable to understand that. We think we understand, and we have all kind of concepts, what it is and how what it could be, but actually we don't know. I just had a talk today with a lady in the Camino house here,
Mm-hmm.
and I said, you can. I asked her, "Do you have a cat?" She said, "Yes." I said, "Suppose you are a cat, and then your owner, yeah, he puts you in a box, takes you to the vet, and you don't know what is happening. And then you get a needle in your leg and it hurts. And you are transported back and you don't understand nothing about it.
Yeah.
Nothing. But in reality, the owner of the cat was taking care of the cat. Yeah, because it get an injection so it doesn't get sick. But because the cat never got sick and doesn't understand the whole thing,
Mm-hmm.
it is just afraid for what is going on. And I compare humans as a cat with God. Or for the people who are in the New Age spiritual world, the universe, and the people from the quantum field as quantum field. The intellect there at work is so overwhelming, and the creative power is so overwhelming. And then we are humans with our teeny teeny brain. And perhaps when we have a super high IQ, we perhaps can reach 200. Then we are a superhuman being. And that's a speck of intellect compared with the power which is there at work.
Yes.
And that explanation gives me a lot of peace with the stories like you told. Because we really cannot comprehend why her son died. Why that was necessary for him, and why was it necessary for the family and his mother. We cannot really not understand.
No.
But I know, like in the example with the cat, the owner of the cat was full of love for the cat, unconditional love, and did anything to protect it. But yeah, the cat had some pain because there was an injection needle in the leg. And my mother was there doing all the things which she did, and it really traumatized me. And I did a lot of work, and and it turned it in another way. And she, thanks to her, I have become the person who I am now.
Yeah. For sure.
And the sacrifice is not to be comprehended,
Yes.
what she did.
Yeah. You're absolutely right. As I was gonna ask you, do you feel like growing up in that type of situation had a big effect on the person that you've become and the life that you're now living?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah. That put me on a trajectory, yeah,
Yeah.
of inner work, self-reflection, learning about psychology, quantum physics, neuroscience, the whole thing. I discovered at the end that all doesn't mean anything because there's all concepts of the human brain to explain something which we cannot just not explain. So I stopped trying explaining it, to be honest.
Yeah.
And I know now that something is helping us. And I really don't understand what is happening. We just had also the talk about how I ended up here in this place. A totally insane story. And I had so much trust in what you say as God. New Age people say the universe. And I say, I really don't know, but I know it is there.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah, it definitely is there. There's some things that can't be explained in our natural world or by, like you said, the brains that we humans have. And that some of those things somehow and for some reason, those things do get revealed on the Camino. And it might just be a small portion of it. I'm sure it's just a small portion of it. But I think that the way that our hearts are so open and our minds are so open when we are on the Camino is the reason that we're able to do that inner work and that self-reflection that is necessary to kind of understand this world that we've been put into, that our souls have been put into. And I feel like my mission is to make sure that the people who want to experience that or more people that want to experience that get to, because there's so many people that don't think that they can do something like this until they see someone they know doing it or until they get an invitation to do it. And for some people, I'm that invitation. So my goal, moving forward as far as the Camino goes, is to be able to host several different groups of people. My niche, of course, is educators because that's who I am, but just to be able to bring people along that are seeking that type of connection and inner peace and reflection, because I know that they can find it on the Camino. They just might need the invitation. The right invitation from the right person might get them there. And so I hope that I'm that medium, that middle person for some people to truly discover what it is that they're looking for.
Yeah. And you know what I realized last year when I was walking from Saint Jean? That in 2013 I walked, 2014 I married on the Camino, honeymoon Camino, 2018 I walked with my daughter. But actually, I already found in 2013, but I didn't know because I was searching for something else.
Okay.
So I when I receive people here and they say, yeah, I'm curious what I will find and I hope to find this. And I explain them, and then I give them an example from, yeah, I already found it then, but I had no clue. It was in my face, but I couldn't see it, and it was already there and knocking on my shoulder all the time. And get off.
Yeah. Right.
Yeah. And it took me literally 11 years. I'm a very slow learner. So, and then last year, finally, I started to comprehend what was going on. And I thought, oh, blimey, it was all the way there all the time.
Wow.
And I just could not see it.
Yeah. Yeah.
So that also happens with people. They walk the Camino with high hopes, with expectations that they find the new path in their lives. And that is a very tricky situation to be in, or mental position, because then you're searching for something which is perhaps already in your face, but you cannot see it because you search outside.
Yeah, for sure. And it's like I have discovered too that you can't really control what comes to the surface when your mind your heart is that open. And that is scary to a lot of people. It definitely was scary to me because I just had no idea what was going to come up. And some things I'm not quite ready to work through, or maybe I want to work through it by myself at home. But when you are in that state, whatever comes to the surface, I feel like that's what needed to come to the surface. And you really have no choice but to think through it and to process it. And hopefully you're with people who can help you to do that, or you meet people along the way that can help you to do that. And another thing about the Camino is that, you meet people that you'll never see again. And there's some type of comfort in that, because sometimes you're way more honest with people that you'll never see again. They're not a part of your normal life, So
Yeah.
I could just have a conversation and be very truthful with someone that I know will just take that story and it disappears with them, because they're not necessarily meant to be part of my life forever. And there's some type of a comfort in that as well.
Yeah.
But you meet so many great people. And, I know that you've probably heard so many stories and reasons that people are there. And it's an undeniable phenomenon that people, they get what they need from walking the Camino. And I'm so appreciative that in 2025, I decided to go for it as my next trek, and then it's just going to keep calling me back. I thought I was going to have this career as a mountain climber that just hopped to different continents and countries, but even if I do climb more mountains, I'll always come back to the Camino
Yeah.
because there's something there that I can't get anywhere
No,
else.
and you really get addicted to it in a way, but actually it is not an addiction. It is longing to go back to who you really
Yes.
are.
Yes.
Because
That's
when you are home, you are not who you really are.
right. Yeah. Because you're always performing, right?
Yeah,
At least if you're,
all over.
yeah.
If you are married, you're performing in your marriage. On your work, you're performing on your work. Are you with your family, you're performing a role. It is always a kind of, and I don't mean it in a bad sense or something.
Right.
It is very logical to do it. And then you are here in the Camino, and as soon as you step one step on the Camino, you
Mhm.
ditch all the roles.
Right.
And it's, okay, you're gone for a couple of weeks, and
Yeah.
suddenly you really are who you are very
Right.
closely. And
That's
I
a great
also
way to
say
say it.
that, yeah, and I also say now, and I truly mean it, that when you are walking the Camino, then you experience normal life.
Mm.
And because that is how I perceive life should
Yeah.
be, could be,
Yeah.
because here we are so. Everybody walks here and say, "Oh yeah, when there is trouble with a blister on my foot or whatever, the Camino provides." That is such a trust that you are being taken
Yeah.
care of,
Yeah.
and that is not in the place where you live, because in daily life is riddled by fear. Everything is driven by fear, and on the Camino, suddenly we leave fear behind. Yeah, and we walk there in totally stupid trust, to be honest, because you
Yes.
don't know. Yeah, but somehow we believe, we feel that it is the way. And then you walk with people who don't expect anything from you, and you connect on a deep level, on heart level. It hurts like hell when you don't see them anymore. This
Yeah.
is real life. This is normal life. And I believe that's where the longing back to the Camino is coming from.
Yeah.
And that's why I find the podcast so important, because when people listen to you talking and the other pilgrims talking and the conversations we have, then you are for a moment again on the Camino.
Mm.
You take the vibe, the feeling, the emotion back in your daily life where you live. And when you do that more than not just once a week, but let's say like a medicine every day, yeah, and before you go to sleep, and then you really start vibrating. Oh, that sounds very spiritual, but anyway, it starts to become a part of you, and it will show course.
Yes.
It will show course. There is no avoiding it. It's not possible. And it only happens when you are training your whole human system in being in that space. And it is just a skill you can train. It is nothing about spirituality, talent, or whatever. Just a
Right.
skill. Yeah.
Right. Yeah. And I feel like a lot of people, though, will never experience that. And that makes me really sad. And I know that I can't convince every single person to walk the Camino or even to just have these types of experiences that reveal your true nature. But I now know that part of my mission is to bring as many people as I possibly can into that realization with themselves. And I feel very honored that God has trusted me with this. And I can see it going so many places and just affecting so many people, whether they're with me or whether they're watching, and just seeing how God is working in my life and in the lives of the people that I lead on the Camino. I'm very excited about what's to come in my adventures on the Camino. So it's an exciting time. I just, coming off of my first teacher trek just a couple of months ago, I was just so ready to make this a big part of my life and to
Yeah.
bring more people along.
Yeah. So you started to recognize your purpose.
I started to recognize it right in that moment at the
Yeah.
church,
Yeah.
right there.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. And it changed everything.
Yeah.
And it changed the way also that I looked at my daily life. As an educator, you are you are naturally going to inspire the students that look up to you, but I want to make sure that I'm inspiring them in the right way because there's so much more to life than your career. I
Yeah.
mean, I'm preparing them to be adults, and I've been teaching for so long that I've seen so many of my kids turn into adults and have careers, and I have one that's working beside me right now in my same school, which is crazy, but I've seen them become adults, and I still want to make sure that they realize there's so much more out there. You know, I'm proud that now you are an adult and maybe you have a family and you have a career and you're doing well, but have experiences too. Push yourself, go out there and do things that you never thought were possible because you
Yeah.
just never know what it's going to lead to. So,
Yeah. So, Yasmeen, this is an awesome conversation we just have. And is this something you really want to say to your fellow pilgrims before we close this episode?
I want to say to every pilgrim that I'm proud of you. I mean, walking the Camino is a sacrifice. You pull yourself away from your daily life. You pull yourself away from your kids and your family in a lot of situations, and it takes a lot of bravery. People don't understand why you're doing it. Some people look at it as a very selfish decision, but it's just a decision that you made anyway. And I just want to tell people that I'm proud of them for that because there is something on the other side of that Camino that you would have never had you not taken that first step. So I think that's the main message is that, keep pushing yourself beyond the limits that maybe other people have set for you because there's so many more things out there when you work past, like you said, judgment, and when you work past fear, and when you are able to know that the limits that you have are only the limits that you put on yourself.
Yeah.
So I think that that's the message that I would like to send to anyone that's been brave enough to walk the Camino.
Yeah, thank you very much. So, yeah, again, a talk where I was not completely speechless because I said also some stuff, but really intense and really beautiful and also challenging. I found this really challenging about what happened to the lady and try to find the purpose of it, which we just don't understand.
Yeah.
And I really want to thank you for sharing this, and also that you took, you said that to the people, to the pilgrims, go walking and get the experience. And I want to say also to the listeners, start participating in the podcast. It is the same. And like you just mentioned before we started the record button on this episode, is that because you had this episode preparation, you was thinking about the whole thing. So actually you got other insights, more insights. So it is also helpful for yourself as participant. And also your story is important, even though I'm not talking about your story because you just told it, but the story of a listener is important, even if you think, and perhaps even that, in particular then, when you think it is not important.
Yeah.
Because there's really no story unimportant, because everybody has a Camino story. So I really do a call to action. If you listen to the podcast, hit the share your story button and subscribe, and then I interview you. And I will be sitting behind under the Christmas tree, unwrapping the package of yet another insane story.
Yes.
And I love it. This is so, I feel so blessed and humbled to be able to do this. It is insane. And I'm an old dude from 68 now. And this is something I never could expect in my whole life to do.
Right.
Gee, unbelievable.
You're
Yeah.
doing very important work. You're doing very important work. The after work of the Camino, I think, is very important because we can just kind of put the experience in a box and, put it on a shelf and never revisit it. But the invitation to revisit it feels great. So
Yeah.
thank you for allowing me to put myself back in those places and those times that were so pivotal in my life. So thank you so much for having me on.
Yeah, thank you too. Okay, Yasmeen, thank you very, very much. And then we will speak with each other again. Thank you.
That sounds great.
Okay.
Thank you so much.
Okay, bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
Whether you're walking the Camino right now or preparing for it, or perhaps you are back home and maybe even suffering from PCS, the post-Camino syndrome, I hope that this podcast inspires you. And if so, do not keep it to yourself. Share it. When you share this podcast, you actively help spread the skill of self-reflection. Every person who learns the skill of self-reflection begins to see people differently. You may still question what somebody does, but the judgment about their intentions start to disappear. And you are entering the realm of non-judgment. And non-judgment is experienced as unconditional love. This is how real change begins. With you, the people around you, your city, your province, your country, your continent, and eventually the world. That is why actively spreading the skill of self-reflection, like an unstoppable virus, is so important. So please do not just listen, but act on this call and share it with as many people and on as many platforms as you can today. For new episodes, go to www.inacaminohouse.com. Select the podcast page in the menu. There you can subscribe to the podcast notifications. You will also find a link in the show notes. Thank you for listening and bon Camino.
Dust on my shoes, salt on my skin, maps in my pocket, stories tucked in. Found your small door, paint cracked by the sun. You smiled and you said, "Here, the walking is done." In a Camino house, where the road sighs out, hang your pack, let your shoulders drop, let the day pour out. A plate, a chair, a listening face, nothing fancy, just a place. In a Camino house, where the miles turn into hearts. 2 mugs of tea, steam curls like a prayer. But this is just talking, breath shared in the air. You ask where I'm from, I forget what to say, so I answer instead how I felt today. In a Camino house, where the road sighs out, hang your pack, let your shoulders drop, let the day pour out. A plate, a chair, a listening face, nothing fancy, just a place. In a Camino house, where the miles turn into hearts. You pass around bread and pieces of ourselves, names in a notebook left on the shelf. Laughter in 3 languages, all meaning the same. I see you, I'm you can rest your name, oh, in a Camino house where the road sighs out. Hang your pack, let your shoulders drop, let the day pour out. A plate, a chair, a listening face, nothing fancy, just a place in a Camino house.